Welcome to Soul Elevation, guiding your ascension to new heights. I'm your host, Kara Goodwin. Okay, get ready for this very activating episode with the amazing Franco Romero. Just like last time he was on in episode 397, we just sort of roll right into the episode without a proper introduction. So if it seems like the first part of the episode is cut out or something like that, you're not missing anything. We just got into the flow before I officially started, and there was too much good stuff in there to stop for a formal intro. And man, we just finished recording, and I can't wait to listen to this one again already. The content is rich, and I highly encourage you to listen more than once so you can really get into the many layers of each topic. Franco Romero is a top 10 best-selling author, spiritual teacher, shamanic guide, and speaker. His first book, The Closet Spiritualist, was inspired by a near-death experience that left him clairvoyant. In 2010, Franco experienced a massive awakening where he was reintroduced to a collective consciousness known as Caleb, a guiding voice that has been with him since childhood. He's deeply passionate about helping others reclaim their truth as divine intelligence, the creators of the illusion or game we call reality. This passion has become his life's obsession, driven by the belief that it's time to move the human race forward in unimaginable ways. So we'll get into this amazing episode in just a moment. But first, I'm so excited to share about my book, Your Authentic Awakening, a guide to everyday spiritual living, which will be available this spring. This book is designed to help you reach new heights of spiritual awakening. It's full of spiritual guidance, practical tools, and captivating personal stories, all working together to expand your consciousness and open your heart. Find out more information on karagoodwin.com. And now, enjoy this episode. I can totally relate to that, and I know that there will be a lot of people who relate to that too. And we haven't officially started, but we are recording, so we can do what we did last time, where it's like, if you want to leave this in, we can leave it in. If you're just talking like off the record, we can do that too. Yeah. I'd love to hear do you have any examples of that? Just because I also have mystical experiences sometimes, and like actually experience like the quantum from time to time. And I would love.
All right, let's have an interview with Kara. Let's turn the tables around. All right, we can start recording. I mean, we can start officially recording because this is getting juicy now. Now we're talking about Kara's life. All right.
Well, I can just so relate to being like, I want to be there. Like, I want the world to reflect that more accurately, and in my day-to-day to be more like that. I want to access that more frequently, more readily. So I would love to hear, like, what do you have any specific examples of how you see things changing and kind of lining up with that?
You know, I feel that that's probably one of the most common questions I get, but not really. I know that seems like, wait a minute, is it common or is it not? I feel that in the way that most people come at it, they come at it differently. They come at and now let's call it loosely, their spiritual awakening, okay? Or their remembrance is the way that I typically call it. I feel like people in their underlying questions will ask that question: how do I stay there? How do I get there? What is it there that I'm getting to? I get mystical experiences. Oh my gosh, Kara, I'm telling you that the one thing that I am not short on is a proliferation of so many stories. And I don't have to tell you because you have interviewed so many people, that there's just so much out there, and the underlying question that most people have, at least the ones I've come across, is how do I get that? or if I'm there, or if I've had it, how do I stay there? And that I was telling you off camera, so to speak, that that this is a process. I want to say it's not a process that's ongoing forever and ever and ever and ever. Okay, because that just seems like for me, that seems so laborious. Okay, to go, oh, this thing's going to go on forever and ever and ever. Then, gee, where am I in this whole thing? Because I'm pretty exhausted as it is, right? And so I don't really feel that this experience that we're going through in this life is a forever thing. In fact, I know it isn't. I don't feel that at all. What I feel is that that we are really getting towards the end of this thing that I call a game, and so much is starting to come in different ways, and we tend to see them as glimpses of what can be instead of glimpses of what is. Okay. So what I'm doing now in the version of the game that I'm playing in is that I'm looking at this and going, what is it? I'm constantly doing this. And this is something that I feel everybody has to recognize, is that you're constantly being shown things, riddles, clues, little glimpses of things. And you're constantly being shown that these things aren't just anomalies. These things aren't just popping up because somehow you got, you were you were vibing at a certain frequency today and you got them. You're getting them because things are starting to be activated in you, and you're starting to remember. What are you remembering? You remember that you never left there. You remember that you're not trying to get anywhere or hold on to anything. You're trying to remember that what you've been shown, all of this is an illusion. All of this is just this veil, like this really cool holographic veil that has given you the impression that you're in a 3D reality and that you are the body that you are. But every so often now you get these mystical experiences. And if you're like me, they're like coming in fast and furious. I mean, they're just like every day, there's just so much there that I've become aware that the biggest thing that I can do, and this is the part that I feel people don't really understand the simplicity and yet the complexity of all this. The simplicity of all this is that all you need to do is recognize that you're having a remembrance. That's it, just a remembrance. And to allow yourself the grace to feel what that's like and know that that's not an anomaly. It's not something that you're going to get once and then 10 years from now you'll get it again. You could, but in this game, things are speeding up too much. You're getting a taste, a glimpse, like something in the veil has finally kind of cracked, or it has thinned out so much that you can see that what you're looking at is the true reflection of yourself. What you're looking at is the true world that you exist in. What you're looking at is what exists on the other side of the hologram. And what you're realizing is that you never left anywhere. You never left what you call home. You never left the metaphysical realm. You're just playing in an extraordinarily sophisticated version of it. And it has to be really extraordinarily sophisticated because you're so damn good at it that you have to really prove to yourself that you're not. Does that make sense?
Completely. One of the things that comes up in a lot of my experiences, and I feel like you're going to relate to this, is the connection of all of those who are awakening, and the people that are connected to the people who are awakening. So the people connected to you who,
yes,
and the closer that they are to you, and there's like this mathematical piece to it, component to it, like the closer they are, the more they're uplifted as you level up, because we pull everybody up with us, but our ability to do so is based on our connection and
come
how
on. Come
we're
on, Kira. Come on. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have just tuned in, this is a unique opportunity. We're actually interviewing Kira instead of Kira interviewing me, okay?
No, I want to toss this to you because I feel like it blows my mind when I come across this, like when I experience it, and I'm like, Franco knows.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. And this has nothing to do with 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, for those of you who know what that is all about, okay? That may be aging
I
me at
was
the
going to
very
say, are
least.
we dating ourselves if we're going to
Yeah.
talk about 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon? But I'm with
Yeah.
you.
Okay. Everything happens for a reason, and these things aren't just flukish. So what you've touched on is something that I talk about a lot. I don't really get into the weeds with much of these interviews. I talk about this stuff in the teachings and the courses that I teach, but you're spot on in terms of what you just said, that everyone of significance, and what I consider to be somebody of significance, is somebody that has really impacted your life emotionally, typically through some very deep level of love or through some very deep level of fear. Okay. And what you're talking about is what I typically referred to as the supporting actor. So now you're getting into, if you like, we can, because I rarely talk about it. We And I remember when you asked me, what do you want to talk about? I said, well, whatever you want to talk about, it's all fair game. And I don't know if this was on the list, but we're sort of going into it. So for those who do or have kids or do their own gaming, there's a common phrase known as NPCs, non-player characters, and and what's really amazing, this is something that came to me a long time ago, and it took me a while to kind of massage it into something I could visually experience, much less talk about. And that is how the simulation works in terms of how the particular players are playing in the game. What do they mean to you? What does this have anything to do with you, your existence here, your experience here, everything that's happening around this thing we call the world, the the impacts of 4 or 5, I mean, all of this, right? Everything that we're talking about here has to do with this game. And so you're talking about the characters in the game, and you're talking about specifically the ones that are the closest to you. And and there is a reason why they're close to you. Okay. That's all been predetermined. Yeah. And you hear about these spiritual contracts and stuff, and everybody, they're not real. Spiritual contracts are not like you write them in blood or in any kind of a thing. Okay. But you make this pact with aspects of your soul group that you're going to go into this game and you're going to play this version of the game, and that they're going to support that version of the game. And then they come into your life and they play different roles, and those roles have one purpose in them, and that purpose is to enhance your experience. Okay. Now I get into this in much more detail in the stuff that I talk about, teach, but there is, to your point, they are here to assist you in being, in a way, metaphorically speaking, mirrors to you, reflecting back to you something that you're supposed to be remembering about why you're here. You're in a big state of amnesia. Most of the people that I'm there, I would say that anyone who's listening to this, they're drawn to this message because somewhere deep inside, they're remembering something. They may be like, oh, this is a cool topic, or I love listening to Kara, or whatever, but it's more than that. You're doing something to activate them to remember something that needs to be heard in this particular message. So no different than the people or even the places or things that are in your life very intimately. They're here because in the grand scheme of how everything plays out above this game, they're part of your soul family, and they're not just any part of your soul family. They're the ones who are awakening right now are really part of the group of beings that are here to help humanity ascend. They are not here to be the ascenders themselves, which is a whole topic in and of itself. You're in that aspect of your awareness that knows that you are waking up to something greater than yourself. And it's not about ascending out of this game because you've already done it. In fact, most of the people that are ascending out of this, not ascending, but awakening or remembering, are actually remembering that they actually helped create it. They built it. They built the very game that they call life for the purposes of creating this Earth School so that others could actually play in it and grow from it and ascend from it. Does any of this make sense? Does any of it kind of gravitate or resonate to anything that you've been sort of shown or experienced about your life?
Yeah, it does. And there are a couple of different ways we can take it, because there are, like we've been talking about, the intimate people in our lives and their reflections and so forth. And that was kind of where I started my question. There's
Yeah.
also the ones, which was kind of the tail end of what you were talking about, the ones who are, who
The
are
villains?
no.
Okay, I was just gonna say, I wasn't sure. Sorry, go ahead.
The who are accessing, like, maybe like they're able to access more expanded versions of their consciousness and tap into greater levels of awareness and consciousness. As more people are doing that, it's like we're overlapping. And so these might not be people that we even know in everyday life.
Very
And
true.
then the impact of that on the regular collective consciousness, like so the regular game that we've had forever, not forever, but like
Yeah.
that we were born into,
Yeah.
and the rapid evolution that's happening, and the role of, like, as people are expanding and becoming aware of their how far out they can go and how they start connecting to people they don't even know. They may not even realize they're connecting to others, but it's affecting the energy and it's affecting
Yes.
collective consciousness.
That is what another way of describing that, or a term that's often used, or at least I use it, is the law of entanglement.
Mm.
And so that's not like it's not a sexy topic. Often you don't hear very many people talking about it, let's put it that way. But it's a very real theory that is, when I say real theory, it's actually real, but it's been theorized here in 3D. Okay. Now, just so people know who are listening, this really does have a major impact on on one's efforts to remember who they are, okay, and how this whole thing plays out. All of this is part of what 5D is about. What you're talking about is the realization that we are entwined, entangled with each other in some way or another. Like the way I describe it, although some people said I that this example isn't the most exciting one either, but it is. It's the mushroom, the fungi community of that are spread, the species of fungi that are spread all over the world, right? And before I bore anybody with all that, it's just to let them know that if you're a mushroom, let's just use a mushroom as the example here, in Portland, Oregon, and you are experiencing something, the likes of which somebody steps on you or whatever, a butterfly lands on you or whatever, and there's more than just that. If I'm on the other end of the world, I'm feeling it as though it's happening to me, and that's how this type of community of species of plants communicate. It's an extraordinary consciousness, and we look at that and we don't realize that we are doing the same thing too. And we're not just doing it in this level of the game, because we haven't even talked about how this entangles with parallel realities and multi-dimensions. But everything is at play here. Does the average person, when I say average, I mean the one who's just basically starting out, remembering, do they have to know all this? No. But they do have to have at least a sense that what they do here is affecting everybody on the planet. And I know that everybody, there's been enough people that have said that, but you hear and you go, yeah, okay. And you're not really like aware of what that means, or even if the effect is that huge. But I am telling you that everyone has a series of codes, and every code is instrumental in the awareness of who we are. And so whatever your codes do to activate you to have a thought and an emotion and a feeling and an expression and a language to the game, it's all being impacted into the game. The more you become, Kara, evolved in your awareness, the more you're impacting so many others who you have no idea are playing the same game somewhere else. It's like you and I are playing this video game. And so we're back to that analogy. And we're playing this video game, and you and I are in different places like we are right now. And we decided to play the same game. Hey, what's Kara up to today? She's got her own character in this game. We'll play that game together for a little while. But when you're not around and I'm not around, you're playing your game. But the difference here, and I'm playing my game, but the difference here is that everything that I'm doing, everything you're doing is being fed back into the field. And everyone who's playing this game for the purpose of waking up and remembering will get nuggets of those things that you and I are doing that are helping us to remember who we are. We don't even have a clue as to who those people are. And the crazy thing is that those very same people are the ones that are supporting you right now, but they're playing in their own game. And it goes on. And it's you that's playing in other versions of the game, but you're not Kara. So there's just different versions. Now, it can sound really overwhelming and complex, but it really doesn't have to be. The focus is on you. And if you say, well, what does this have anything to do with what's going on right now? What's going on right now, in the purest sense, is that we're remembering that we're playing a game. It doesn't seem that way when things are being thrown at you and you have all these life events that are causing you to really hunker down into some other aspect of your 3D self. But I assure you, everything is happening because whoever they are, whatever role they're playing in your life, if you're going through an experience that is really that's causing you to question your purpose here on this planet, and they are doing it for you. They're doing it for you so that somehow, some way, you're going to remember something. And doing that, you're going to transfer that data over to somebody else. And so there are a lot of people that talk about how they're getting downloads right now, and they must be coming from their higher selves, which is true, or that they're receiving downloads from the divine. That's true. But a lot of that information that they're receiving is aspects of themselves that are playing in other versions of the game that you're not even aware of, or others who are playing it too, and you don't even know who they are. We're all
And that would
contributing to
be
it.
in other parallel realities, do you mean?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So there are different parallel realities that we play in. Okay. All of them are converging into this space now that when the game gets to 5D, everything will start to collapse. All versions of the game in all parallel realities will start to collapse on top of each other to form one unified game of remembrance of us being collectively consciousness while still having experienced this game as individual aspects of itself. Does that make any sense?
Yes, it does. And
Okay, I wasn't sure.
yes, it does make sense. And I have a couple of questions. One would be, so at this time, not everybody's playing the same game. That's when everything collapses, that then we get in the same game. And there was another question after that, but I'll let you do that one.
Yes, the game itself in general is the same. Like, if you and I were to buy the a digital game somewhere, and it's the same game, it's the same version. But the circumstances, the specific avenues, the game is so sophisticated, it has multi-levels of narratives. So we're playing it separately, differently. I may be more into a higher version of the game where I'm experiencing extraordinary amounts of metaphysical, alchemistic, and mystical experiences because I've reached that level of the game where now you're being tested like you would in a cool game to see whether or not what you have learned, you can now apply it in some way to make things happen, to play with energy here and manipulate or manage it so that magically to create manifestation. Others may be playing the version of the game where they're in tune with some galactic or dimensional energies called the Palladians or Arcturians or Mantises or whatever. Others may be looking at it from more of the divine feminine aspects of the mystical sense of all these energies of Kuan Yin and Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene. I mean, there's just so many versions of this game. Some are crystal, they're into the crystals and Lemurians or the Atlantis story. I mean, there's just so many ways to play this game. But if you understand that you're playing the game, you don't get lost in those versions. But
Okay.
everybody is playing separately versions of the game, and the idea is how do we come together to remember that we're playing the same game? Because at the end of the day, what I do affects you, and what you do affects me, and what we do together affects other people. And those people or beings are trying to remember so they can finish the game. Once one individual gets to the top of the mountain, so to speak, it starts to speed up the game faster because the game is meant to ultimately collapse on top of each other. And if people are trying to understand what is coming next, and I know this is still pretty much 20,000 foot stuff, this is what we mean, is that this version of the game we call 3D is ending. It's like any other game. Once you have done enough to it and you've done it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, and you've experienced it in every which way from Sunday fashion, there's another level, but it doesn't keep going and keep going because that's what some people say. It just keeps going, keep going. And man, that just sounds so tedious and sounds so laborious. No, this game is supposed to evolve out of itself into 5D, which is a different experience. And it's not really a game at that level. It's an experience. 5D and 6D and beyond are where we become game makers, not game players.
Okay. So so you see everybody as playing the same game. So even the, people who are not working, who their reality is very 3D, very superficial, very like how much money can I get? And I don't care who I've got to cut down to do that. And I'm just worried about number one. And, because there are plenty of people in this game who, that's what they're focused on all day long. Is just getting ahead, but from the material sense. So do you think everybody on the planet is playing the
No,
awakening game? Is that where we
no.
get the NPC kind of thing that you were talking
Yeah,
about? Okay.
yeah. Yeah, and it's just the opposite, actually, Kara. Very few people are playing this game. Um, and again, it gets into a lot of this parallel reality stuff, but just to make it simple, um, imagine again that you and I and others around the neighborhood or the city or the country or the globe are playing the same version of the game, but they're not playing, it's not everyone that's playing that game, right? Like right now, there is probably a handful of people, I mean, not handful, more than a handful of people that are playing like Minecraft, okay?
Mhm.
And I've never played it, but I just know that it's a popular game, a virtual, not a virtual, but a digital reality game. It might be virtual. And so they're playing it, but they don't know. They don't know all the hundreds of thousands, if not more. But it's not hundreds of millions, and it's not billions that are playing. Okay. In the same manner, we're not here playing with 8 billion people. That's where people get tangled up with this idea that if 8 billion people are playing the same game, how in the world are we going to get 8 billion people to get on the same page so that we could all end the game? That's where people don't realize that it's not about trying to get 8 billion people to see the spiritual truth of all of this. It's about making sure that the ones who are playing this game, the very small handful, there are various biblical and other sacred and spiritual books and texts and documents that talk about a sacred number of beings that will ultimately, let's call it ascend or remember or wake up. Okay. And depending on who you are talking to, that number varies. Okay. And so I'll be really specific about a number that pops up in our neck of the woods, because I'm going to assume our neck of the woods is that a lot of people were raised in some Judeo-Christian way. Okay. And not everybody. I mean, actually, only about 20% of the planet, if that, is even identified in that way, but still big enough that it influences a lot of the way that the game structures itself. In that context, 144,000 is a number that comes up all the time. And so people start to flip out. Am I in that 144,000? What does that mean? How does that work? And what I try to explain to people that it's 144,000 beings that are energetic beings that will ascend into a higher version of what we call 5D. Energetic beings is different than human beings. Okay, human beings, you are counting the bodies. Okay, energetic beings are energetic frequencies, meaning that they can exist in many, many beings across many, many games. There are, in this game that we're playing, your version and mine, that there are 8 point something billion people on this planet. Well, the last time I checked, I have never seen an aerial shot of 8 billion people waving at me. Okay. So I'm going to go by the fact that somebody's saying that there's 8 billion. So, okay. All right. But at any given time, I only can see maybe 50 to 100. Maybe if I'm in a stadium, 40,000. Okay. Most of those are NPCs. They're just extras filling in a role because you don't want to go into a stadium and nobody's there. And then you kind of get the feeling that there's something up. Okay. So you get the fill-ins just like you do in movies, just like you do in games. You get the fill-ins, and so that you can have that experience. But only a handful, true handful of all the beings are actually playing. And none of them, for the most part, here's the interesting thing, none of them are actually playing in your game, which is why so many people talk about how they're going through this remembrance. They're so attracted to spirituality. They're so attracted to this. They have had these experiences. They know more than they know that they want to know or care to know or thought they knew, but they can't share it with anybody. Why can't they share it with anybody? Because the ones who they're sharing them with, going back to the original discussion we had, are supporting your experience. They're not here actually playing in your game. They're playing a character in your game, but they're not playing their game in your game. Again, remember, look at it in terms of a digital game. I'm not sitting here in my house hacking into your game. Okay. There are some people that are good at doing that, but I'm not hacking into your game to play my game. I'm playing my game. You're playing your game. And again, if I call you up, Sakira, let's go, let's play together, then we'll play together. And that's a different game that we're playing. But does that make sense? So there are 144,000, if you want to use that number, it has to do with the actual beings, spiritual beings, light beings that are actually evolving out of this school. And that's what is starting to happen right now, is that those light beings are starting to, we're at the second phase of the remembrance process. We are now getting to that point where the light beings that are here on this planet to play out of this game, to go into 4 and 5D and 6D, are starting to wake up. So you're going to see over the next year or two an exponential hit on everything, viewership, everything. I mean, people are going to really, just like 5 years ago, the level of awareness was nowhere near what it is now. The level of conversation and the diversity of the conversation, even though that it's diverse, all of the coalescing of that diversity wasn't there 5 years ago. Now it's like everywhere. 10 years ago, forget it. There was barely anything. You have
Right.
a lot of good books out there, some YouTube channels, but now, so we're going to see an exponential growth in the number of people that are tapping into this awareness that wasn't there before. But the ones that are right now currently tapping into this, I would venture to guess the vast majority of them are tapping into your show and other shows because they are realizing that they're here for a big purpose. Okay. But they don't have a clue as to what that means. But that means to me that they are remembering that they're part of the group of beings that are here not to send the 144,000, but to assist in the ascension of those 144,000 beings. Does that make
Mm.
sense?
It does. And it's really, really fascinating. Because for so many reasons, my mind's like, do we go? Which way do we
I
go?
know, I know
Let's
you
go a
did. I
million
know you
ways.
did this the last time. I know I did. Like, which way? Which way? Which way? There's all these doors I can
Yeah.
open up. Which one?
I know. And one of the things that keeps coming to mind is like the things that you say, if if it's the first time somebody's hearing about it or they have heard other people talk about these things, it's easy to think like, okay, this is theoretical or it's a metaphor. And that's one of the exciting things too, of like continuing to awaken and to continue to live more in alignment and things show up. You know, you kind of started this whole conversation very early on just talking about the acceleration and how
Mhm.
like it's a daily occurrence now, and it's just you're constantly wowed by being immersed in the mystical, but it's so literal. It's
Yes,
so
it's so
literal.
literal. It's so literal. And so you actually tapped on something that it's kind of like one of these station break moments, if you will, because um, oftentimes I don't have really the time, nor do I have, and I mean this in the most sincere way. I don't have the time to listen or to read into the comments that people make of interviews like this. I do my best to give them what I feel they can take away with something and it helps their activation and remembrance. But every so often you'll get people that will be very cynical about this conversation. A lot of those, something like along the lines of, oh, blah, 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 you're not giving any substance here. You're not saying anything either that somebody else hasn't said in some way, shape, or form, which I really beg to differ. But that being said, you're not telling me something I could grab onto and run with, okay? Or maybe you're not clearing the path enough for me to just experience it without having to do much work in it. Or maybe I've done so much work in it or play in it, but I'm exhausted and I can't figure this out. So it must all be a bunch of bull honky. Okay. Um, the game, no game can be played without the players. Okay. None. Right. No game can be finished, at least not this game. It cannot be finished with people, and I've been saying this for about a year now. No, it cannot finish without the participation of those who are supposed to be playing in the game. Okay. Meaning you can't just, as much as you might want to and desire to just sit and forever listen to, interviews and YouTube discussions and videos and stuff, you can't just do that because the game is going to require you to participate in it, which gets back to what we were talking about just before we got on. That every single day is a extraordinarily beautiful, but yet at times maybe not overwhelming, but it definitely keeps you on your toes, of mystery and clues and riddles and tips and glimpses and you name it of what you're supposed to remember about yourself here and what you're supposed to do here. You can't just sit on your laurels, so to speak. You can't do that. It's not acceptable. Okay. You can't just observe, retain. Oh, I'm just, it's just a bunch of talk. No, you and I have been talking about this. It's a constant interaction with the game. But if you don't know that you're playing a game, if you don't know how to play the game, and if you don't know what your role is in the game, and if you don't care to know, because I'm telling you what your role is, okay, then you're going to have a hard time. You're not going to just be able, you're going to sit there and go, I've been waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for 4 or 5D to happen, and nothing happens. Well, guess what? You have just told the narrative of the rest of your life. You're going to be waiting forever, forever and ever and ever, because you have chosen that as your declaration to the game. I'm just going to sit it out and watch everybody else play their versions of the game. And I hope I can be part of the fun when it all is done. That's not how it works. This is a game. You must participate in the game. In
Mm.
everything that you and I are doing separately and together is to help people understand what the nuggets are. I mean, what we just talked about is really profound. Okay. It's a way in which to remember that you yourself have a huge role to play in the evolution of the remembrance of everything that exists here. But if you decided to take a break today, and if I decided to take a break today, that information gets lost in the field, and some will pick it up and some won't. And it just becomes more, let's just say, a little more challenging for those who are just now starting to remember. The ones who are starting to remember are not here to go through the challenges that you and I have gone through. Okay. And I know that you and I have gone through challenges, even though we don't know each other very well. I can tell you that it's not that difficult to go through that just in the short period of time that I've known you. We've done it so that other people don't have to do it as hard as we do, but they still have to do it. They still have to do it. They still have to play the game. They can't sit there and go, when is it going to happen? It's
I
happening.
love that. The consumption and judgment versus the participation and the action and that is such an amazing point. I love it.
Yeah.
Now, because I've heard you talk before about the facilitation of the transition to 5D, do you see there being like a mass event? Do you see it being one experience that everybody shares together? Is it an individual experience that happens throughout time for different people? Like, how do you see that happening?
Wow. 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 Okay. All right. So I mean, I could easily say it's a little bit of everything you just said there, but I'm going to imagine a popcorn machine, a popcorn maker, or just the kernels on that are starting to pop. It's going to pop individually for people, for maybe small groups of people or an individual. It's going to pop, and then they will experience the joy of watching all the other kernels start to pop. But at some point, you're going to get a huge number of the kernels to start popping. Okay, because the energy in that popcorn maker is getting hot. Okay, and in our sense, it's no different. Consciousness is rising, and at a certain point, it's going to get really, really high. And when it gets really high, many of the kernels are going to start popping. And when they do, that's the acceleration I'm talking about, where when all of a sudden one pops, the next one pops, the next one pops, it's because we're going through a process where everything's starting to increase. Because again, once you reach the top, once one reaches the top, it activates a flood of new codes, because everything's about coding. Everything, we carry a whole bunch of coding that will activate as soon as frequencies rise to certain levels. When you're talking about the final act, so to speak, of remembrance, then it will feel as though it is happening all at once. And I can tell you just from the experiences that I'm having now with having a community and with having students and whatnot, that as they come together, they're starting to activate each other. And as they start to activate each other, they're starting to remember their purposes relative to each other or to themselves. As that happens, things are getting extraordinarily mystical. And what I mean by that is people are really, really starting to activate their six senses in all different ways. And they're starting to experience them with themselves, and they're starting to experience them with others, whether it's in the community or outside the community. And it's starting to ramp up. It's like every day now, literally, it becomes like, what does the today have that is going to bring about this incredible mystical experience of remembering? What am I going to be shown today? And so it started out once upon a time with just like someone like me remembering, but now it's becoming where more and more people are remembering, more and more people are remembering, and what they're remembering is expanding their consciousness. And what they're doing in expanding their consciousness is they're becoming extraordinarily, well, as I would say, intelligent, spiritually intelligent, or mystical. And it's no different than the way that I've talked about this in many cases with AI. It's you're exploding. You're exploding into a realm of infinite knowledge and wisdom that we're capable of achieving. And that when it gets to that point, Kara, it does become an event where, to your question specifically, right now it feels like just individual kernels are popping, but within a very short period of time, we're in it right now. I'm not going to say within, we're in the period right now where more of those kernels are popping. That's why I call this the year of the reveal, because of so many of those that are here to help the ascension process will start to see or feel into their purpose being here to do that. And those who are here to begin to start remembering so they can finish the school up will also start to get activated in that remembrance that they're here to weave their way out of this game. A lot of that is going to start happening right now. And then when you get into 5D and the cosmic event, there is this thing called the 3 days of darkness. Okay. And there is truth to that. Okay. And that is that at some point we will detach as a consciousness. We will detach from this other aspect of consciousness that is 3D. So kind of, I've always used this example. Back in the day, you would see video footage of when a spaceship would, shoot out into the stratosphere, and it would detach, and the part that got it there is going to detach and fall back into the earth. You see that imagery, and that part that is detaching and falling back is the 3D piece that gets left behind. And that game continues on for a short period of time, and then it ends. And the part that continues is this new version of 5D. And when we start to get to that point with the detachment, it's where the 3 and the 5D worlds break apart completely. So we're being held by a bunch of tethers right now. We're literally being held by tethers. 3D and 5D have now been separated. There's a lot of people that say, well, we're starting the separation, whatever. But I'm just telling you that what I'm seeing is that we're being held by tethers. And these tethers are stargates or portals or whatever. They're vehicles by which we can, from a consciousness standpoint, start to go up and down and experience some 4 and 5D things, the metaphysical, the mystical stuff that you were talking about, but yet still feel like we're, maybe for better or for worse, still grounded in 3D. But those tethers are going to start to snap one by one. And as soon as they start snapping, that's going to create a chain effect. And as soon as all of them end, when that last tether splits, is when you will see the most seismic occurrence, which is those 3 days of darkness. It will be like a hydrogen bomb times a gazillion that will go off in the game, in the universal energies of the cosmic energies of everything. And it will be so incredibly intense that it will create a light, a flash. Okay. And it will be because 2 atoms, if you will, have separated, which is no different than how we understand the separation of atoms at a very quantum level, okay, where if you separate 2 atoms, it creates a hydrogen or atomic bomb explosion. Well, this one is going to be a universal atom that is going to split, and when it does, it's going to create this light that literally causes everything to stop for what appears to be like 3 days and nights. And when we awaken from them, those who have ascended leave the picture. They leave the picture, and those who stay back won't even remember that those people were there.
Wow. So everybody is still embodied in this at this time with these 3
Yeah.
days of darkness. And so do you see some of the prophecies in terms of like many people kind of cycling off as we
Yeah.
ramp up to this?
Yeah, it's all meant. It's all part of the evolutionary cycle that we're all going through individually. The reason why people are appearing to be moving out of your life, whether they're close to you or universally, famous people, whatever, is because they're part of your game. They're part of your 3D programming. They're part of that aspect of you that is ascending out of 3D and becoming more in tune with 4 and 5D energies of awareness and of oneness and of creation, the 5D energies of coming together as one. They're not going, just like with anything else. It's like watching an old soap, an old rerun of something. They're just going to fade out. They're going to fade out, and the way they fade out is that their programming, their roles in your game have ended, and so most of them will just fade out. You won't even know that they faded out. Okay, but in some cases, the more prevalent ones, they're gonna just fade out through physical death. They're done. Their role in your game is ended. And so they're going to leave. They're not part of the 5D process. They're not here to ascend. These are the extras. Okay, they're not here to ascend.
Mm.
They're here. They were here to help support the experience that you're having right now. So,
Wow.
so yeah, the prophecies are spot on. I mean, most of the prophecies out there, whether they're Hindu based or whether they're in North American or South American indigenous based or what have you, or Christian based or whatever. And there's a fair amount of prophecy that is all of there that are all very similar. We just have been, what we see of those prophecies in some cases are the diluted versions of them because of the way that they've been interpreted or misinterpreted over the course of hundreds, if not thousands of years. But the pure prophecies are all pointing to this time right now. The pure prophecies are talking about the very things that we're talking about, the expansion of consciousness. It doesn't call it that, but the expansion of consciousness and in a way that we will evolve and remember ourselves and the role of all the energies of the what I call the inner child or the divine child and all these things, the resurrection, of, if you will, of the divine feminine energies and how they play out with the divine masculine energies of this thing called the Christ consciousness. Things that people hear about in somewhat abstract notion, they're all there. They're all there to be put together in a simple process of putting it like a puzzle together. But all the prophecies are pointing to this time. And I will tell you something, it's not just the prophecies. There is a lot of historical information that points to this time. There is a lot of science that points to this time. I mean, if you just look at just the pure fact that in this planet, the human civilization cycle is about 10 to 12,000 years, meaning that every 10 to 12,000 years, there seems to be some sort of calamity that causes most, if not all, of humanity to be extinct. And then somehow it resurrects itself again into a new version and a new civilization, a bunch of new everythings. It's just the same reason that we've seen over the last, I don't know, 5 or 10 years, the awareness that in archaeology that we're finding out that we haven't been here for 10,000 or 15,000 years, the way in which we were told, at least when I was growing up. We've been here since at least a couple 100,000, if not several 100,000, maybe even closer to 1 million years. And we weren't walking around the planet as apes or any of that. We were very sophisticated, intelligent beings that were here in different civilizations, and the science and technology was extraordinarily advanced, extraordinarily. But it got covered up like any good game does. It gets covered up, and a new version of the game comes, and what's left of those remnants start to look ancient and antiquated. But you still can't deny that there are still things out there that just defy even today's logic or science in terms of how they were built
Mm.
because they were reminiscences of past games that were played here.
Wow. Yes, the hidden histories are just fascinating.
Yeah, and more every day, and more every week, every year. And I wrote this, I wrote about this in the book that the Closet Spiritualist, which was the first book. I'm coming out with my second one this year. In that book, I talk about, I don't talk about it. I was having a conversation with the collective beings that I do most of my channeling with. And they were talking about this was 6 years ago now, 7 years ago now. It's amazing how I began that book. It didn't come out until like 3 years ago, but I began that book about 7 years ago. And they were talking about that the time was going to come where all of these civilizations would start to reveal themselves. And you see it every day. All these ancient sites, the monolithic sites and other sites that are popping up everywhere, with such extraordinary architecture and extraordinary stories and the mammoth stones that were used to create them. And there's no 3D logic to that at all because it wasn't created in the 3D world. So
Yeah, absolutely. It is wild.
yeah, I mean,
That's a whole
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's a whole discussion. And
Yeah.
you can see how all of this weaves itself into the narrative of where we're at right now. I mean, everything has a correlation to it, to this point in time in history. I don't
Right.
even know where we began. I mean, we began with you asking me about the people nearest and dearest to us, but you can see how it weaves itself. And again, everybody doesn't have to know all this, but you also have to not shun away from it. If you're listening to this, to this conversation, there's a reason why you're listening to it. There's a reason why you're being drawn to it. There's a reason why you're asking the questions you're asking. And it's for nothing else, it's for your edification, because in your story, you're playing a very sophisticated game. In your story, you're playing the game of an interviewer, that you're trying to, interview so many people for this. But what you don't realize is that you're doing this because you're bringing aspects of yourself together so that you can tell yourself your story, and you just feel it's somebody else's story.
Mm. Ooh. Well, I love that. I
Hmm.
love layers, love mystery, love like all the weaving and I've loved how this conversation has, just like you say, it's all been woven together, but it's
Yeah.
also all the mystery at all those different layers. Like, some people are drawn to hidden history. Some people are drawn to galactic. Some people are drawn to the divine feminine resurrection. There are all
Yeah.
these different ways of expressing their aspects of one thing.
Yes.
And but we're naturally drawn to certain things, but there's so much mystery, and that is what just lights me up.
Yeah, I could tell. And it's a mystery that if you try to play it at the ground level, where you or I or others would tend to do in the past, where many of the people who are listening to an interview like this are trying to gather as much information as they can to figure it out relative to their life. That's good. That's good. But you have to at some point allow yourself, which is what I tell most people is, and this is where I felt like I made the hugest breakthroughs, is where I tell people you have to allow yourself the grace to know that you're understanding, or you're getting involved, or you're having interest in all this, because you are remembering the greatest story of all time, which is to say that you are God, and you are playing a version of yourself in this thing, or your body that you are playing in, and you're trying to remember through the game of forgetfulness. And if you can start to look at it from that higher perspective, you can start to see the forest beyond the trees. If you try to keep it at the ground level at 3D, you're going to always come up across a lot of 3D obstacles, a lot of them, and you're not
Mm.
here to do that anymore. You're really here, as I've told people, you're really here to do this now. Where this isn't about a mulligan like in golf, and we're going to try to do this again in another school. This school has achieved the highest level of ability that it was designed to do. And now it's time for it to end its courses, if you will, and allow those who did finally achieve that level of awareness to finish up, wrap up, and bring this new level of consciousness to all different forms of consciousness that exist beyond 5D. And so we're done. We're done here. I mean, I really can't stress this enough. There are a lot of people that are out there saying, well, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and it's hundreds of years, and we're going to live for more generations. Nope. I'm going to tell you right now that just, if like, again, if you look at the geology, not the geology, but if you just look at history and you look at the course of human history, almost all civilizations end within 10 to 12,000 years. And guess what, folks? We are at the 12,000th year. And
Mm.
so we're done. This game is over. How
Wow.
fast it ends is up to us. How torturous and how painful or how pleasurable it can be is up to us. It's up to us. It's up to us to stop sitting there and pointing the finger at other things in our lives, and realize that we put ourselves in this position to remember how incredibly huge we are. And if you don't want to believe me, hey, talk to as many near-death experiencers as you'd like, because many of them will tell you the same thing. We are here playing a game, a
Mm.
simulation, a dream, play of life, whatever you want to call it. We're here doing that, but we just seem to hear it, and then it goes in one ear and out the other.
Right.
And so,
Oh my goodness. I'm just noticing the timer. Are you okay on time?
jeepers creepers.
Where did it go?
Yeah, well, I feel like we just got started.
I know. I
Yeah,
know.
I probably have a few more minutes and then I'll have to, yeah, I'll have to go
Okay.
on. So,
Well, I feel like we came to a crescendo. That was a great that we can put a punctuation, an exclamation mark on that.
yeah.
Is there anything, we've covered a lot of ground here. Is there anything that kind of jumps out at you in terms of like final thoughts that you want to leave people with, maybe some insight into how they can
Yeah.
deepen that connection within them?
Yeah, this has been something that has been coming through for a little while now, and it's not all that different from what I've said in the past with you and others, and that is, but it's a little bit more defined. Okay, um, I'm amazed. I'm amazed that that the evidence, if you will, the information, if you will, to become who you are is out there. Okay, now I can't speak for all the other people that are talking and teaching about their version of this spiritual game, but I can tell you that from what I have been shown, that it now more than ever there are opportunities for people to really tap into their remembrance. And as they're doing it, experience the magic and mystical aspects of what they carry in terms of what I call the divine codes, their energetic signature, the uniqueness of them. The hell does that mean? It means that this is the time when one can start to tap into all aspects of your six senses, whatever it is that you desire to tap into, or that you came here to activate right away. The aspects of your six senses. How do you use telepathy? Empathy at the highest level is telepathy. How do you do mind melding? How do you do alchemistic manifestation? How do you do paranormal mediumship? All that stuff. Okay, those are aspects of what we are. They're not gifts that we got to play here and you're the only one that has them and that's it. More than ever, that's part of the incentive, if you will, to explore your remembrance. The more you remember, the more you activate these six senses, the more that you will be able to step into your mystical sorcery, magic, priestess, priest, whatever you want to call it, godliness, whatever. They're not, none of these things are negative things. These are extraordinarily divine things of intelligence. But you have to take a leap of faith. You have to say, this is the day I am going to do this, because it's right there. Never before has it ever been so clear that your ability to remember who you are and to create in the way that you've often thought you could do, it's right there. But you have to take the leap of faith to trust yourself that what you're feeling is actually that voice inside of you that has been telling you all along that it's ready for you to do that next step, to take that leap. It's ready for you to do it. Never before has that been available. It's always been something that was sacred to the highest levels of teachings. The high swamis and gurus and sages who spent days, years, months, lifetimes doing. Never before has it ever been available to people now, because their role in this game is vital, but they have to take that leap of faith. And so what I'm saying to people is take the damn leap of faith and do it. Do it. Start to explore who you are as God. Because if you don't do it here, there is one other place you will do it, and that is when you die. Okay. But at that point, the game is over. You had the chance to do it here. It's about doing it here. It's not when you die and you find out that you are as big and as immense and as extraordinary as you always felt you were. That's not the game. That's the game being over. You're doing it here. So stop sitting there and hoping or praying or whatever. Start actually believing that you are what you are, because you are what you are. So start doing that.
Wow. Well, and I can imagine that you have resources to help people to take that leap. So can you how can people connect with you and your offerings?
Well, thank you. That wasn't a plug-in for that in any way,
I
shape,
know,
but
I know, I know,
okay.
but I can imagine that people are like, okay, but what is that? What's my first step? What do I
No,
do?
no, no, I agree and thank you. So I have a community. It's called the Playground, the Inner Divine Playground, and you can reach out to me and reach out into the community of like-minded beings, soul family people, extraordinarily beautiful and just soon realized consciousness beings that are playing in that community. You could just go to playground.francoromero.com and you can go in there and just check it out. There's also a website that you can go and just check out the courses that I teach. I teach what's called the Way. And the Way is funny because I used to call it, and I still do, the way of the inner child. Okay. But I used to call it the way of the inner child. Now I really refer to it as the way as taught by the inner child, because the way is a sacred truth of remembrance of who we are. And it's been found in all sorts of philosophies, Taoism, religions, of the power and the beauty and the magic behind the child energies. So I teach all about how to use those energies, the divine feminine energies, all sorts of different codes in you so that you can remember who you are as the divine intelligence you are, so that you can remember that you are God, and so that you can help yourself as well as the human race through this time of ascension into the higher levels of consciousness. So that is just basically francoromero.com. And then there's my book, which you can also find in there, and my next book that's going to be coming out later this year. But everything you need to know are basically in those two places. And then I guess my YouTube channel, which is I am Franco Romero. So, okay.
Wow. Well, what a blessing to spend this time with you, Franco. Thank you so much. This has just been so enlightening and verifying and, let's see, validating. Would that be a better word? But it's always so fun to talk to you. So
Likewise,
thank you.
likewise. Thank you
Thank you
for
so
having me,
much.
Kara. I know that we're gonna be doing a lot of this together in one way, shape, or form going forward. So I really appreciate it. I really love the way that you and I get charged up doing this, and how there's so much more for us to do, whether it's in these interviews or in other capacities. So it's nice to get to finally be in a space where you and I are just chatting away, just like as if we've always been buds. So
I love it.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
You too. Thank you for listening to this episode of Soul Elevation. Please take a moment and think about someone in your life who might be uplifted or have their curiosity sparked by this content, and please send it on to them. Let's keep sharing high-frequency, empowering content to reinforce the highest potential for humanity. I also invite you to subscribe to this content. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you for the next episode of Soul Elevation.